Welcome everybody to the second half of the video series on the baby refusing the breast, and this is going to be discussing the late onset. So the previous video talked about early onset refusing of the breast. So a baby that refuses the breast the first couple weeks of breastfeeding, so not later on. This one is going to talk about what happens when you've been breastfeeding well and now you're into the breastfeeding, baby is older, maybe the baby is a couple months old, 3 months, 4 months old, and all of a sudden the baby has started refusing the breast or extremely fussy at the breast. So I'm going to grab my information here. So I'm going to grab my information and we're going to talk about the late onset, which is after 2 weeks old. So anytime after 2 weeks. And we're going to talk about possible causes of what, could be causing this refusal or fussiness. So the first thing, so in the first video, which I do recommend that you go back and watch that video because there are a lot of questions that I ask for you to kind of like answer in your own mind, like could it be this? So if you answer yes to any of those questions or multiple questions, it kind of helps you a little bit to decipher what the cause could be and then the strategy of fixing it. And then this is going to go a little bit along with that. So if you know what those questions were, you can kind of like, compare if there's any of that could be happening in the later onset of fussiness. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the first cause that could be the problem, and this again is after 2 weeks, is if the baby gets a cold or any other kind of virus or illness where the baby's nose is stuffy, where it makes hard for the baby to breathe. So when they're breastfeeding, they're sucking, swallowing, and breathing at the same time. And when they can't breathe out of their nose, let's say, they want to breathe out of their mouth. So when they're breastfeeding, they cannot breathe well. And so this can cause them to be fussy at the breast. This can cause them to refuse to breastfeed. So that's one question is, that I had asked in previous, has the baby been ill? If the baby has been ill, this could be the reason. So you would want to talk with the doctor about ways that you can help the baby to be able to breathe better. Sometimes having a vaporizer in the room or a shower, put him in the bathroom with the shower running, not in the shower, but in the bathroom, and the shower is running, so the steam is, they're kind of getting that steam to kind of clear their nose. So sometimes you can do some of those things before you feed. You might also offer more frequent feeds. So if this is the reason, you would offer to, you would want to feed the baby more often for shorter periods of time, and that way the baby's still getting the amount that they need, and they're feeding more often. And so they're not going to be starving where they're going to be really frustrated at the breast. Another cause could be an ear infection. So always in these cases would you want to go to the pediatrician and have the baby checked out to see if there's any underlying problem like a virus or cold, whatever, an ear infection. So with an ear infection, sucking can cause pain in the ear. So that right away can be a sign. They typically will be fussy when breastfeeding and maybe completely refuse to breastfeed. So those are two things to think about right away. If your baby's older, so I'm going to say like anywhere from a month old up, and they are all of a sudden refusing the breast, crying at the breast, very fussy at the breast. Another one could be high need, temperament, or colicky babies. They a lot of times show these symptoms around 2 to 3 weeks, so usually after that 2-week mark. they start showing signs of colic, of reflux disease, again, ear infections. So you would definitely want to talk with the doctor and have the baby seen to rule out some of those things. Is the baby colicky? Is the baby have reflux? Those things cause the baby to be uncomfortable, and so you want to get the baby comfortable. And again, you may have to try things like short feeds, but more often. You may need to pump to keep your breast milk up, because maybe the baby's not going to feed as often. If you can't get the baby on the breast as often, you're going to want to make sure your milk supply stays with, with what the baby's going to need. Because most likely you're going to get the baby back to the breast if we can solve the problem. And usually it's not a permanent problem. It's just something that needs to be solved. So some suggestions for... some suggestions for soothing a baby that is extremely fussy is lots of skin to skin. You're going to want to put the baby to your, hold the baby a lot. You always hear the saying that you're going to spoil them. And honestly, you're as a mom, if you have tried everything that you can think of and they're still crying and it's not their normal behavior, then hold them. Give them the extra attention that they need. If a baby is extremely fussy and you're not able to figure out why, or maybe it is their common, you may decide to do things different if they're just a very fussy baby and there's absolutely no reason, like there's no medical reason for it, they're just extremely fussy. You may choose to find ways to handle that. But in any case, spoiling the baby, I wouldn't worry about that at first. Like, you have plenty of time to train them, to teach them. But when they're little like this, you're not always going to be able to hold them. You're not always going to be able to feed them. You're not always going to be able to rock them. So taking that time with them is important. Now, of course, it's when you have more than one kid, that makes it hard, and I totally understand that. So learning to carry your baby, to use like the carriers, to carry them so that your hands are free and that you're able to walk around, get things done, take care of other children while the baby is skin to skin with you or just being held. Also, you would want to begin feedings before the baby is showing, when the baby is showing like early feeding cues, not the late feeding cues. So the early feeding cues are like sucking on their hands, which can happen. They suck a lot, so that's not a feeding cue in itself, but when you pair it up with other things. So when they're putting things to their mouth, when they're rooting, so when you're touching their face and they're rooting, those are early signs of hunger. You don't want to wait until they're crying. This will help. Of course, changing diapers after feedings, not before. That can help a lot, because sometimes when you change the diaper before they feed, then they're really upset, and then trying to get them to feed after it can be really difficult. So that's something to think about. Swaddling them may help, but you have to figure that out with your baby. Some babies do not like to be swaddled. So if you're swaddling your baby and they're becoming fussy, then take them out of the swaddle and see if that helps. If they're not swaddled, try swaddling them to see if that helps. And of course, the new form of swaddling is to allow the arms to be free. So you can kind of like look that up and try that. You also have to realize that everything in the environment is a form of stimuli. So if there's TVs on, if people are talking, if there's a vacuum running, if other people are holding the baby, just constant things going on, these are all stimulants. They are stimulating the baby, and it can cause the baby to become overstimulated. So sometimes you need to go into a quiet area where the baby is, maybe the lights are dim, just things that are the least amount of overstimulation. So very quiet area, not very, the light is dim. That will help. Sometimes singing, or kind of like shushing the baby, just making a certain sound, where you're going shh, 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 shh. Sometimes that helps calm them. Trying different positions when you're breastfeeding. That's also, something that you can try. And then if you do have an abundant milk supply, so those are some things that you can do for a baby who seems to be extremely fussy, those things that I mentioned. So now we're going to get back into more causes. So if you have an abundant milk supply or a forceful letdown, which I did talk about in the first video, this can cause a baby to not only gain weight rapidly, it can also cause your breast to feel very full between feedings, and this could be an idea that your supply is very abundant. Nothing wrong with that, but it can cause some other issues. So what you want to do is you want to breastfeed often to avoid breast fullness. You can restrict the baby to one breast for at least 2 hours or more before switching to the other side. So say you feed at noon, and then so you feed on your right side at noon, and then you're going to feed on your right side again at 2. And then the next feeding, so about 4 o'clock, you would start on the other side. So doing this can help relieve some of that if you do have an overabundance of milk. And then expressing it to kind of not completely emptying it, but just to make the breast a little more comfortable, just to kind of gradually reduce your milk supply. So of course, when you hear reduced milk supply, the first thing you're going to be thinking of is, no way, I don't want to having more than I need is better than having not enough. And it may seem that way, but it can cause a lot of other issues. It can cause reflux, it can cause fussiness in a baby, it can cause a baby refusing to breastfeed because of a forceful letdown, because of too much coming out at them at once and they can't handle it. So having an overabundant it can be just as bad as having not enough. So that is a strategy that you can try. So the breastfeeding on one breast for 2 hours or more. So if the baby feeds every 3 hours, then you would do it for 3 hours. So 12 o'clock, the one feed it. So 2 feeds on one breast, and then you would go to the next feed. You can hold the baby in a position to nurse that is more, where they're more upright, so they have more control rather than they're flat, laying flat, and the flow is just pouring into their mouth. You can also be leaning back, doing the lean back position. You could be in a rocking chair, anything that allows the baby to have more control over the flow. That's going to help. You can also try a nipple shield to make the flow more manageable, but I would not recommend that. I would say that if that was needed, and you should be seeing an IBCLC at that point. Like, it should be an IBCLC that says this is what you need. But that would be like your last resort. Another reason that the baby could refuse the breast or be fussy at the breast is the baby's inability to cope with the milk flow. So we talked about the overabundant or the overactive letdown. And what happens a lot of times is that flow is just so fast. And when that flow is fast like that, it's hard for the baby to control that flow. And this can cause the baby to have trouble sucking, swallowing, breathing at the same time. And a lot of times this can be a sign if the baby's weight gain is less than 6 ounces per week and the baby consistently has difficulty handling letdowns. So you would definitely want to talk to the doctor if you're noticing that. Reflux can also cause a baby to refuse the breast or be very fussy at the breast. So this can be an issue even without spitting up. So some of the symptoms of reflux are the back, baby arching their back and crying during feedings. At this point, you would want to see a doctor. If you're noticing that when you breastfeed, they're arching their back, they're crying during the feed, they seem very uncomfortable, you definitely want to go see the doctor and make sure you mention that to the doctor. Now, again, with reflux, you could do the same thing with the milk flow, where you could have the baby having a little more control, sitting up, doing a more up position, maybe sitting on your lap facing forward, or maybe you would do more like a football hold, anything where the baby is up, sitting upright a little bit more and has a little more control. You can also do the lean back position for you, where the baby is on top, and again, they're controlling the flow. It's not like just gravity pulling. Another thing could be allergies or sensitivities to, again, this could be reflux. But if the baby is receiving something in your milk that they could be sensitive to, it could be medication, it could just be caffeine, anything, this could cause baby to be a little more fussy and crying more often. So that's something to think about. Is there something in my milk that could be causing it? Am I eating a lot more dairy? Am I drinking caffeine? Like, what exactly is your diet, or are you taking a medication that could be affecting it? Other symptoms that could be a sign of allergies are skin reactions like eczema, hives, that kind of thing, congestion in the nose, and digestive issues like mucus or blood in the stool. Of course, if this happens, you would want to see the doctor right away. Another thing is sometimes when moms use a cream or ointment on their breast, this can cause a baby to either be, one, allergic to it, or they don't like the taste of it on the breast. So that's something to think about. There's also thrush mastitis. Both of those can cause a baby to be frustrated at the breast. Thrush is painful, so it makes breastfeeding painful. And mastitis decreases milk flow because of a plugged duct, so that can cause some issues with the baby, and then there could be a different taste of the milk. It could be a little more salty. So in both those cases, you would need to talk with the doctor because you would need an antibiotic for you and for baby. For baby, if the baby has thrush as well, and then for you if you have mastitis. Baby also could be teething, and they get sore gums. So a lot of these things, you'd be like, okay, how old is my baby? If they're like 3 months or more, they could be teething. They're showing signs of teething. That could be a reason that their gums are sore. So you can allow the baby to chew on something cold before they breastfeed, just to kind of numb up the gums a little bit. That might help make breastfeeding a little bit easier. Another thing that could be causing the baby is just being distracted. A lot of times, a baby just gets distracted from all the stuff going around. I know whenever I would see like a 4-month-old baby, they're so easily distracted. And to try to help a mom with breastfeeding challenges and the baby is 4 months old, it's like you can't, because they're so distracted. So if you have a baby that's easily distracted, you're going to want to do some things to kind of minimize the distractions while you're breastfeeding. The last two things are unusual stress. So if the baby is overstimulated, upset, or under any type of stress, this can affect breastfeeding and can cause some issues. So this could be if the baby was left to cry for a long period of time. It could be if the house is just very loud and chaotic all the time. If breastfeedings are scheduled and timed or frequently interrupted, all of those can cause stress to the baby. Big changes in their daily routine. So if they've been having a specific routine and all of a sudden you've changed it, that can cause it, especially like traveling. Traveling can be a big disturbance in breastfeeding. And not just the baby refusing, but you yourself, because you don't have time to breastfeed. Maybe you're driving, you can't breastfeed. It's just that causes a whole nother. So this can cause stress for a baby, and in turn can cause some fussiness and refusal of the breast. A separation from the baby, like if you're sick or you had to go somewhere, whatever the case, that separation can cause stress and could cause fussiness or refusal of the breast. The last one is nursing strike, and this is usually a sudden breast refusal for a baby who was breastfeeding well. So they've been breastfeeding really great, all of a sudden they want nothing to do with the breast. At this point, you want to take the baby to the doctor just to rule out any medical issues. Again, like you want to make sure they don't have ear infections, just different things. You want to definitely rule out any of those. You want to do lots of skin-to-skin and focus attention on the baby, and avoiding artificial nipples if possible, and feed by cup or spoon. This can be really hard to do, but if possible, that is something that you could try to avoid. If you're using bottles and all of a sudden you notice they're refusing the breast, that might be the cause, is the bottles. So the questions that I had mentioned the previous video are important to kind of help with this as well, to know like, okay, am I giving a bottle? That could affect it, and these could be some of the reasons and some of the causes. And you know, just something to think about. So that is it for the subject of the baby refusing the breast or being extra fussy. If you have any questions about what I've talked about today, please leave them, leave a comment. I will always, like I always do, put the info, put a link in the description box that talks more about the late onset of breast refusal, things that you can do. I usually use kellymom.com a lot because it kind of goes in and you have to click on the different links and there's like extra information. It takes you to extra stuff. So you could get a deeper in-depth discussion and, kind of figure out what's going on. Definitely, though, if you have a question, feel free to leave it in the comments. I will try to do a live Q&A soon, so if that's something that you're interested in, you can definitely put it in the comments and let me know, and maybe I can get that up soon. I hope this video helps you guys. I know it's kind of long, but it's a big subject, a lot to cover. So I just wanted to make sure I got it all covered, and I'm glad that I had, I split it up in two because it would have been exceptionally long. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It's very important to keep my videos, going. And right now we're working on a goal of 1,000 subscribers. So if you can help me reach that, would be great. And there's a little notification bell next to the subscribe button. If you would like to be notified when my videos go up or when I, put out a video, you can hit that little bell and that will let you know. So just whatever you do, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Keep watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.